Today, what we want to do is we want to talk about the big game, the ultimate prize, of course, Super Bowl 59, that Lombardi trophy. We want to give you guys semi-realistic Super Bowl matchups that we want to see personally this upcoming season. Should be tons of fun. If you enjoy, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. On the road to 20K. Amir, you're joining the show. How you doing, man? Today's been busy for us for reasons I will not say.
I'm doing good, man. I'm happy to be here and talk sports. It's my dream. I love it.
Absolutely. Well, without further ado, I will throw it out there. I'm going to throw it out there with a matchup of two franchises that historically have not been great, especially in the postseason, if they even get to that point. I don't know if you have this one, but I'm going to throw it out there. The Cleveland Browns, we're Browns fans, so we're going to be delusional, but we are a good team. At the end of the day, it all depends on Deshaun Watson, number 4. If he can be 70%, let's say, of what he was in Houston, I think we can be legitimate contenders. As crazy as that might sound, but Deshaun Watson, of course, and the Cleveland Browns can represent the AFC. In the NFC, the Detroit Lions. They were right there last year. If their analytics team just used their football side of their minds instead of strictly the analytics, kicked a field goal here and there, they would have went to the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. Amir, the Browns, the Lions, two franchises that have never won a Super Bowl, meeting in that big game and guaranteeing us at least one of these franchises can end their droughts at the NFL level. Your thoughts about that matchup?
I think that's a great matchup. And it's and personally, it's crazy because I have the same exact one as well.
Perfect.
I think, yeah, I think, like you mentioned, for these two franchises, the fact that they both have been on major droughts, and the fact that even last year, teams were like, hey, listen, right, Browns, Lions, Super Bowl will feed families. The fact that both franchises, are the only two teams that ever go 0-16 and they go winless in the season. The fact that they consistently had number one picks, consistently had to, try to draft franchise quarterbacks that never panned out. But it's crazy for the Lions. I mean, the Lions had Matt Stafford, and they were still losing games. They had Calvin Johnson, they were still losing
Yeah.
games, and simply just, just not, progressing. And the Browns, on the other hand, the Browns had like 20 different starting quarterbacks,
In
in a
our
row, something
lifetimes.
crazy like that. Right. And so I think this would be great for both teams to finally end that drought, or even to at least make it and play against each other. It would be great for both teams and both
I mean
franchises.
that's a drought in itself. I mean, both teams have never even made the Super Bowl, let alone win it. So a lot of history would be set in that game. Of course, both teams close in proximity in the grand scheme of things. Again, great story for the both of them. Amir, go ahead and throw out your second one as we both share the Browns and the Lions. Man, crazy world we live in that they're both considered potential Super Bowl suitors.
So for my second matchup, I have the Chiefs Lions. I think for the Chiefs Lions, personally, I have these two teams at the top of the league this year. I'm kind of choosing these two teams because I think that this is going to be the matchup for this upcoming year. A Chiefs Lions Super Bowl, and we kind of saw how entertaining the game was. Last year, week 1 when the Chiefs, were missing some guys, and it was still entertaining. And so I think the fact that the Lions have a chance to sort of block the Chiefs three-peat, beat arguably the greatest quarterback we've ever seen, which I think he's on that path to be, and not only do that but also win their first Super Bowl and make their first Super Bowl. I think that everything is pointing towards that matchup to being a great matchup.
Yeah, and this is what happens, ladies and gentlemen, when we, Amir and I, talk football once a week for 30 to 45 minutes, whatever it is, we eventually start to shape the same opinions about certain teams and matchups. Because I have that one as well. And now I'm hoping that's our last one that we share in common. If not, I'm going to make some up on the fly. But the Chiefs Lions, like you mentioned, rematch from last year. The Lions won the game when everyone was complaining, why are the Lions here? They don't deserve this prime time first game of the season matchup against the Chiefs. But they showed that they belong there. And then they would go on to have a great season, like you mentioned, and like we've mentioned prior, just a couple decisions away from getting to the actual big game and having this matchup be a reality. But I agree with you there. Again, it's Patrick Mahomes going first, third. The Lions are just trying to get their first. And of course, the Lions are hungry. This is a team that, no pun intended, of course, because they're Lions. They're hungry and they're desperate. Not desperate, probably, but they're destined to make a big run at this thing next year. And I think if not next year, I don't know if that's really going to happen. So their window, even though they're a super young team, I think next year makes a lot of sense and it's lining up for them to make that run and to at least make the Super Bowl next year. But I agree with you. I think that matchup between the Chiefs, Lions, this time, hopefully the Chiefs got all their players. It would definitely be an entertaining matchup. I'm going to throw one out there. And if you have this one, Amir, we might as well just do a group list here at the end of the day. To me, this is one that probably, I'll say this, it's not going to happen. But if it happened, one, the media would be on fire. Two, the storylines would be great for fans and, of course, media as well. But the game, I think, also would be very fun to watch. It is the New York Jets, led by Aaron Rodgers, playing the Green Bay Packers. Not only does this have storyline connections of when the Jets with Brett Favre played Aaron Rodgers, when Brett Favre was a historic quarterback and got replaced by Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers has now had a great career with the Packers. He gets replaced by Jordan Love. That would be one, of course, little side storyline there. But the Jets, with all the media attention behind them finally getting over the hump after years of not even making the Super Bowl, they get back to the big dance. But then Rodgers has to play his old team, his old head coach, his old fan base. And that would just be a mentor versus mentee. I think it'd be a great matchup. Both teams have great offenses. Jets have a better defense, but both have solid. I get the Packers have a solid defense in their own right. I just think it'd be a very fun storyline. Mentor versus mentee. And of course, I'm a big fan of Jordan Love here. But your thoughts about that matchup, man? Mentor, mentee, of course, the old versus the new.
Yeah, that's definitely, a great storyline. And you brought up a great point how, Brett Favre, went to play Aaron Rodgers. And I think that, if Rodgers, was to play Jordan Love in the Super Bowl, I mean, that would literally be, you know, so crazy. And honestly, I think it would be great for both of them because, the relationship that Aaron Rodgers has with Jordan Love is so much better than what Brett Favre and Rodgers had. I think,
Right.
with Brett Favre, he sort of, kind of pushed Aaron Rodgers to the side, kind of, like little brother them in a certain way, kind of like, listen, like you're my replacement, so I'm going to kind of push you to the side, kind of get out of here. And Rodgers, sort of, put that chip on his shoulder and grew into that, But when it comes to, Aaron Rodgers and Jay Love, it was truly like a mentor, big brother figure because, Aaron Rodgers, did better than Brett Favre. He took Jordan Love in, taught him his ways, let him sit behind him for years, built a relationship with him and basically said, hey, listen, eventually I might end up leaving. It's going to be, you're going to pretty much take over and leave this franchise in good hands.
Yeah. Again, I like that matchup from the storyline aspect, also from the Jordan Love aspect. But again, in that matchup, who would you want to see? Would you want to see the young guy in Jordan Love defeat the old legendary Packers quarterback, or would you want to see Rodgers go out with one more ring?
I'll probably see Rodgers go out one more ring. I think Rodgers, probably would win just because I think the Jets are, a better structured team. But at the end of the day, it's football. I mean, we've seen teams, come in a one game setting and win. But I personally say, I want to see Rodgers. Rodgers is the guy who, a lot of people kind of view him as a playoff choker. I think, his resume and his career and his arm talent alone, puts him in great conversations. But I think that if he was to go out and win this year, and sort of, break those allegations of being a choker. I mean, the fact that he's lost to the Niners every year, not every year, but every time he's matched up against him, the fact that he's had times where he's completely disappeared in the second half of playoff games. I think if he was to come out and win this year, I think that would change the way people kind of view his career as a whole.
Yeah, sentimentally, Rodgers is the right selection for that team. But I think his legacy is set in stone no matter what. I don't think he has an argument for the GOAT, right? Maybe playing, maybe as far as actual skill level, he has that argument. But at the end of the day, I think I'll play devil's advocate here, man. I'll go with the legacy starter in Jordan Love in that hypothetical matchup. Definitely doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I've liked him since he was at Utah State. Give me your next matchup here. Of course, Samir. And actually, before we do that, let's backtrack a little bit. We talked about the Browns and Lions. We're both Browns fans. I'm going to assume that we both want the Browns to win that matchup. But for the Chiefs and Lions, we both share that matchup as well. Who would you want to win in that one? Would you want the Chiefs to make history, to set the three-peat? Patrick Mahomes officially, if he's not already in the GOAT conversation, he's making a pretty damn good case against Tom Brady doing something he never did, which is complete a three-peat, but also play at an elite level. Or would you want the Lions to make history, making and winning for franchise's first ever Super Bowl?
Personally, I've never been a Mahomes or a Chiefs hater. I sort of, grown to the fact that, Mahomes is probably the greatest quarterback, we're ever going to see. And the fact that, we're right here in the middle of his peak, in the middle of his era and his
Appreciate
legacy.
it.
And so, yeah, and so I sort of accept that fact. And so, me personally, I want to see history. Obviously, it's history on both sides, but when I'm making my picks, I also want my picks to be correct. And so, it's not that I want the Lions to lose. I also want, Mahomes to complete history in three-peat. Because I think, this is something that, that's honestly that might not ever happen again in football. I
No.
think even going back to back alone in football is very difficult. The Lions still have a load of teams where the following year they have a chance at making it or making a push. It'll obviously be tougher to make it that far. But I think for the Chiefs and seeing Mahomes, sort of make his legacy. Seeing Kelsey who eventually, is going to retire. Don't know how soon that's going to be, but I want to see the Chiefs make history in three-peat.
Yeah, you brought up a great point. And as a Browns fan, I know the struggle of a fan base that has never won anything. As of course, we're talking about the Detroit Lions. And but again, like you mentioned, I don't think it's ever going to happen again. At least not in our lifetime. A three-peat. For that reason, I think I might actually rather see the three-peat because we'll see other franchises win their first Super Bowls in our lifetime. The Lions will eventually get there. The Browns hopefully will eventually get there. Texans, of course, another team in that argument, but we will never see a three-peat again, at least not in our lifetime. So, I probably regretfully would have to agree with you there. I don't feel great about saying that, but
Yeah,
again, the three-peat is that now again, if this was Mahomes going for his third Super Bowl just in total, I would go against Mahomes in a heartbeat. But the three-peat is what pushes it over the top. But Amir, go ahead. Give me your third matchup here. Of course, we talked about both Lions matchups and then the Packers and the Jets. What's your third matchup?
So for my third matchup, this is an interesting matchup, with two high power offenses, but I think it'll be a fun matchup. We saw them, playing in regular season last year, and it was honestly a fun game to watch. And so my third matchup, I got the Cincinnati Bengals and the San Francisco 49ers. And I think,
Hmm.
having two young quarterbacks, two good coaches. I know you're not as high on Zach Taylor as I am. But looking at how both teams are loaded offensively, you got the Bengals with Burrow, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. You got the Niners with Brock Purdy, George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey and Debo. I think that these two teams, this will be another high scoring Super Bowl game. I think that this game, you got Burrow and Brock Purdy's second Super Bowl appearance. You got Kyle Shanahan finally to kind of go over the hump. I think he's hated too much for his Super Bowl losses and kind of fold him because I mean personally, he hasn't really had the benefit of facing, a lower tier quarterback in the Super Bowl. I mean, he's lost to, two of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen.
Right.
So, I think that this will be great for both franchises and both teams.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Kyle Shanahan's not had a great playoff history, at least as far as the Super Bowl, right? I mean, you get there with the Falcons, you blow that lead, and then, like you mentioned, he lost a couple Super Bowls to some great quarterbacks, or the great quarterback in Patrick Mahomes as a head coach. Uh, what bad luck! I'm sitting here thinking about that now. Like, imagine being an
Yeah,
offensive coordinator, working your whole life, and then you get to the Super Bowl and you got to face arguably the greatest two quarterbacks of all time.
yeah.
Absolutely insane. Kyle Shanahan eventually, hopefully, he will get over the hump. But I agree with you. I think that's a great matchup. The star power in that game is there. You have the big name quarterback Joe Burrow. Of course, all the other big names in that game as well. I think that would be interesting. But who would you want to win that game? Because to me, I'm a Burrow guy. Even though it would suck to see the Niners go there again and to lose again, I'm going for Burrow in that matchup. Of course, I think he's the second best quarterback in the league when healthy. And I think that would cement it here if he were to finally get over the hump and get a Super Bowl.
Honestly, I love Burrow, but I would really hate to see another team in our division win it all. It would honestly suck to see that. Seeing the Bengals or the Steelers or the Ravens win it. And I know everyone hates the Niners, and they probably lean more towards the Bengals. But personally, I've always loved the Niners. I love the Niners the way they play. I've always
Yeah.
been a fan of their mantra of being a physically opposing team, and high powered offenses every year. Them always having even lower records and still being able to go on runs and win games. I love Shanahan as well. The fact that he's always had people viewed as mediocre quarterbacks and have still gone on runs. I think Purdy is the best quarterback that he's had, or outside of Matt Ryan up to this point. But I think, I'll lean more towards the San Fran just because, I love San Fran. I love Brock Purdy. I love Kyle Shanahan.
My question to you then would be, in the scenario that Joe Burrow and them would get it done, is this the greatest core of a team or greatest, like, let's say 5 year stretch of a team that never got over the hump? Because you got to think about how much star power that San Fran has had on offense, on defense in the last 3 to 4 years. Would this be the greatest team to never get it done? Of course, you have the Patriots, right? Of course, they had some years, but they eventually got it done with that same team, pretty much. Just no Randy Moss down the line. Um, like it would have to be up there. I think it would be a top
Yeah.
three like core of players that never got it done. Because if they don't get it done this year, can we really think that they're going to get it done the year after? It's hard to believe, but I mean, I think that they would be a top three core to never get it done.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely they have to be, and I say them and probably those Bills teams in the '90s. I mean, the fact that those Bills teams made it to four straight and lost. With the Niners, I mean, it's kind of tough because like you mentioned, I mean, they lost to two of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen, and and they've never had a top five quarterback in the league. I mean, like whenever we see
Right.
teams win every year, I mean, they always have elite quarterbacks in the league. Brock Purdy's still young, and so. But man, I mean, honestly, they have to be. I mean, they have been some loaded teams, some very loaded teams, and I mean, they lost in 2019 when they were loaded. They were up, they blew that lead. I mean, you go and fast forward to now. I mean, this past year, they were a loaded team and lost to a Chiefs team who, on paper had no business beating them. They had Mahomes, obviously, but on paper, I mean, the Niners are arguably the best team in the league every year.
Yeah. Well, let's go to an interesting matchup. Let's go over here to we got to talk about the Texans. Texans, of course, made a lot of offseason additions. They got better pretty much in every asset of the game. They only got more experience now from the quarterback and head coaching spots, but they also bring in Stephon Diggs, an all-pro level wide receiver. You bring in Danielle Hunter, excuse me, however you want to pronounce his name. This team was super young last year, and they're only going to get better, and they have done that. They brought back Nico Collins. Of course, Tank Dell's coming back from injury. This team is ready. And I guess it all just depends on how is CJ Stroud going to continue to develop. If he does, it's scary. He's going to be challenging Mahomes and Burrow and Josh Allen for the top quarterback in the league as soon as year number 3. But I want to see them in the Super Bowl. They're a fun team. Have them in the Super Bowl. Let's say on paper, I have the Dallas Cowboys, the Battle of Texas, something we've never seen before. Of course, the Texans are the newest franchise. This would not only be a huge year for Dallas because they have so many star players going, being potential free agents, but if they were to do this, it would finally shut up the Dallas Cowboys fan. But at the same time, Dallas, for Dallas, like would they'd be like, hey, we made the Super Bowl. I don't know. Their fan base, if we could take them out of the equation for the team, I would like to see the Battle of Texas. Again, something we've never had. Two teams that are fun on both sides of the ball. And of course, it'd be a battle of, I guess, good quarterbacks. You'd have two really good quarterbacks in that matchup. A lot of star talent. I think it has it all. Again, the media, of course, would be behind that as well. Excluding the Dallas Cowboys fans, I would love to see that matchup. Your thoughts about the Battle of Texas?
I never thought about that. The Battle of Texas as a crazy, matchup.
Yeah.
The fact that they're both from Texas, both on opposite sides of the conference is crazy in itself. And the fact that if they were to match up, the amount of division that the whole state would
Dude,
kind of go into, the amount of chaos and
Cowboys
riots
fans
would be.
are loyal.
They are loyal, and that would be absolutely crazy to watch. I would definitely love to see that.
Yeah, who would you want to see win that? Would you want to see Dak Prescott shut up the haters, finally get over the top and kind of cement himself as a top 5 guy, and Dallas finally getting their first Super Bowl in a long time, or history being made? CJ Stroud in year number 2 gets that first Super Bowl. Texans get their first
Personally,
Super Bowl as the youngest franchise.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough because obviously the Cowboys fans are ruthless. I personally think that, right now, I mean, there's still sort of a self-proclaimed America's team. I think most of America doesn't like them, and so when I compare both franchises, obviously I'm still a little sour about us getting blown up by Houston in the playoffs, and
Yes.
but also I love Stroud. I'm an Ohio State fan. I've been high on him, and so for that reason, I probably lean towards Houston. The fact that, we get to witness a guy in year two, lead his team to the Super Bowl despite his team being loaded, and people might try to, devalue or discredit him. I still think, he's a great quarterback. And if he was to win it all, I mean, like you mentioned, we'd have a serious convo about him being, either the
On that
second,
trajectory.
exactly, being, one of the top guys, in the league in the quarterback position.
Yeah, no, I would also go for the Texans in that case. Being the NFL's youngest franchise, they had a lot of dark days there, but I think to get over the top would be something special this early in that quarterback's career in CJ Stroud. And of course, you've been pushing the media or pushing the narrative of Dak Prescott to Miami for a while, so that's another reason why you got to have Dallas lose this one. But there's another team that I'd like to see Houston match up with, and that's the Green Bay Packers. They're not an official matchup that I have, but something to throw out there. Two young, fun quarterbacks and teams. I think that'd be a great matchup. But what's your fourth matchup here of going into next year?
It's crazy, I have the Texans in this matchup as well. And these two offenses, I love seeing high-powered offenses go at it on the biggest stage. I love seeing high-scoring games, explosive plays. Even though I'm a defensive guy myself, I'll play defense. I love, tough, secondaries and tough defensive lines. But I want to see an entertaining game that's pleasing to the eye test. And I think a game with two heavy passing attacks, two absolutely loaded offenses. I got the Texans and Rams for my fourth Super Bowl. Seeing CJ Stroud and Matt Stafford, seeing, Sean McVay, you get to see Puka, Cooper Cup match up against, Stroud, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, seeing, two high power teams. This will be a high scoring game in my opinion. This might be like a 40 to 37, type game, a game that comes down to the last final drive. And so, I would love to see that matchup.
Yeah, especially two very young defenses in that matchup. The Texans, of course, and then the Rams. They've gotten a lot younger in the last couple of years. But I'm never going to turn down seeing Sean McVay in the Super Bowl. That's my favorite coach in the league. But of course, in that matchup, it sounds bad because the Rams just got a Super Bowl. For that reason, I'm going to have to go with the Texans. Again, being the NFL's youngest franchise in that hypothetical matchup, having the storylines and the conversation about can CJ Stroud join Mahomes in that conversation, those would be fun. Those would be entertaining. And for that reason, I'm going to go with the Texans in that battle there. But that is another smaller matchup that I had written down here. So I'm happy you mentioned it.
Yeah, so for me, I would love to see in that game. I mean, you brought up a great point. The Texans, haven't won anything. They're a newer franchise, and I would be messed to go against the Texans, but I like Sean McVay as well. Obviously you like Amore. He's probably your favorite coach in the league. And, I love Puka, I love Cooper Cup, I love Stafford, and so I lean towards the Rams. I think this would sort of solidify Stafford's Hall of Fame career. I think this would
That's a good point.
sort of yeah, I think that this will sort of add to, Cooper Cup's, legacy. He's still on track to, be a Hall of Fame receiver, even though he's dealt with the injuries and stuff like that. And I thought he's always have been a great receiver. And I think that this year, he's going to, sort of have a breakout year as well. I think this will also add to Puka Nacuya's career. And I think that him winning the Super Bowl in year two as well, sort of, you know, adding to his legacy, his young legacy. I think that, this would be great for the Rams overall as well.
The only thing I would ask from the Rams there, and maybe the Texans can do this with one of their NFL legends. The Rams got to bring back Aaron Donald for that game. Just one game, just one game contract. Just Aaron Donald come out of retirement, get this, try and go for the second ring. But for the Texans, I mean, who would that be? Would that be that's an interesting question, and this is completely off topic. If you could add one Houston Texans legend to this team, who would it be? It could be like a Mario Williams, of course, an edge rusher. You could do Andre Johnson or a guy like Arian Foster. If you want to go Matt Schaub too, you can go Matt Schaub, their franchise's leading passer. If you could have one dude from the Texans franchise's history in that hypothetical matchup, who would it be?
You know, To be honest,
Because Andre
a
Johnson,
guy
I
who
think, is the clear choice, but they don't need a receiver.
right. Yeah. I was gonna say, a guy who's struggled with that franchise, who was loyal, through the thick and thin. I have to say JJ. Seeing him,
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
come,
obvious,
yeah,
obvious. That's
yeah. Seeing him, be able to play in the Super Bowl, the big game, which is something he's been trying to strive for his whole entire career. Him to be able to finally go back to Houston, a team that he was loyal to, he gave his all to, and seeing him literally be able to literally, finally, reach his ultimate goal, which was, make that big game. I would love to see that for him.
what the fact that in my mind went straight to Mario Williams instead of JJ Watt for the franchise. Something's wrong, man. So obviously it's too early in the morning
Honestly, I love to see, Deshaun Watson, suit up for a game,
for a
and replace
game.
C.J. Stroud.
Coming for just like a trick play. But I'm down for that. JJ's still working out, man. So
Yeah, he
JJ and
is
Aaron
though.
Donald, they want to both come back for one game. I'm down for it. My last one here is kind of a two for one. I have technically the Rams and the Bengals. I think that'd be a great rematch this upcoming
Well,
season. But outside of that, I wanted to throw the Eagles in here. I wanted to get them a potential matchup. The Ravens are, of course, something that we can throw out there. But what I wanted to do, I wanted to go with the Cincinnati Bengals and the Philadelphia Eagles. It was my Super Bowl prediction last season. And of course, that was anything but the truth. So I'm going to go with it again. I think it's a great matchup. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles defense has only gotten better, and this is a team that's only gotten better. But I think two great quarterbacks, so many talented wide receivers in that matchup. I mean, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. They have some good running backs in that matchup as well. Well, I'm sorry, Joe Mixon is now in Houston, but Saquon Barkley would be in his first Super Bowl. This is a matchup of teams that are trying to finally get that first Super Bowl in this era of their football, or of their teams rather. Of course, the Jalen Hurts era and the Joe Burrow era. It's been a while for either of these teams to get a Super Bowl. So why not? I think it'd be a fun matchup. But your thoughts on the Bengals and the Philadelphia Eagles?
that would be an interesting matchup. And it's crazy. I didn't even think about that matchup. You know, honestly, two great structured teams. I mean, you got Jalen Hurts versus Joe Burrow. I think that's a great matchup. Both
A
high
throwback to
power offense.
college.
Right, exactly, man. I didn't even think about that either. I mean, you got the
Yeah.
LSU versus Oklahoma matchup again. With Burrow and
I was thinking
Jalen
Bama,
Hurts.
but
Right, yeah, and can freaking Jalen Hurts, get his revenge on Joe Burrow. I mean, so last time they played, I mean, they were in the playoff. When Jalen Hurts transferred to Oklahoma and Burrow completely blew them out. I want to
yeah,
say, I think Jefferson had like four receiving TDs that game, like the first half, something
the
crazy
greatest
like
college
that.
football team ever. I
Yeah,
think.
right, man. That would be a great matchup to watch. I would love that matchup.
But what's your last matchup here? If I think we only went through four of yours. So go through your last one if you have another one.
So for my last one, I have the Eagles in it as well. I'm high on Jalen Hurts. As a person. Obviously, I've sort of strayed away from, his game recently, based off of last year and how he kind of handled, the downfall of his team. And so he moved down in my rankings. But, I want to see Jalen Hurts prove to people that, he's not a fraud. I want to see him prove to people that he's not just a guy that's, a good product and a really good system. And so, and, also, kind of a guy that's similar to his play style, a team that I don't like and a quarterback that I'm not high on like most people, but I think it'll be a great matchup. I have the Ravens versus the Eagles, Lamar
Ravens,
versus
Battle of
Jalen
the
Hurts.
Birds.
Right, the Battle of the Birds, two guys who have similar play styles as far as running the ball. And I think Hurts has slightly better arm talent, but I think, Lamar's a guy who plays hard every year. I had the Ravens making it, last year. Even though I don't like the Ravens, I cannot stand them. But I think this would be a great, matchup. Me and you both agree that, even though we might not like a team or like a player, the one thing we can enjoy is good football. And, I would love to see the Ravens and Eagles battle it out. Two physical teams. Two dominant teams as far as their physicality. Their strength and stuff like that. And so I would honestly enjoy watching that matchup.
I think out of both of these teams, the one singular player that would benefit the most from a win here would be Lamar Jackson, saying that he's
Yeah,
already gotten
definitely.
two MVPs and he's on the trajectory of one of the greatest of all time. However, I would go with the Eagles in that matchup. I'm a big fan of AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, of course. I think is now getting overhated. But in that matchup, I would go with the green. Of course, also my favorite color, with the Philadelphia Eagles. But your thoughts? Who would you root for in that matchup?
Yeah, so being a
Bias
Browns
aside.
fan,
Bias
yeah,
aside.
all right, bias aside, personally, I probably still lean towards the Eagles. You know, I mentioned it earlier. I love Jalen Hurts. I think he has one of the greatest stories as far as him going to Bama. Kind of getting beat out because he kind of underperformed. Him then having to transfer to Oklahoma. People saying oh he's not that good of a quarterback. He was at Bama. Him then leading that Oklahoma team. To the playoff. Except he happened to run into the greatest team we've ever seen in college football. Him then getting drafted, by Philly, and people sort of, kind of looking over him, kind of brushing him aside, kind of, not realizing that this guy has a great talent. And then, I mean, being the quarterback to the Super Bowl in 2022, and last year, I mean, he wasn't the only person that sort of underperformed. It was the whole entire team, and I think going into this year, even if this team is loaded, no, I'm still seeing the rankings people completely just like look over this Eagles team. Me and you both, think alike. Me and you both are high on this team, and so I would love to see Jalen Hurts, win it all.
I was one of those guys that underrated Jalen Hurts for one big number 11 reason there in Philadelphia. I'm a big fan of Carson Wentz. I thought he was going to be the guy for him, and Jalen Hurts was the guy that took his job, and Carson Wentz has been a backup ever since. But hey, he's in Kansas City now. Maybe he can finally get a ring, a second ring now. But as Nick Foles finished the job that Carson Wentz started back in 2018, different conversation for a different day. But that's going to do it, man. We ran through 10, 11, 12 potential Super Bowl 59 matchups. It's been a long day for the both of us. But of course, any last thoughts before we get out of here? Episode 198.
Nah, man, that's it. I like looking at these matchups. Obviously, there's some great matchups. Hopefully, we honestly get our dream matchup, the Browns Lions. Probably won't happen, but hopefully you do, and I'm excited to see it.
That is the number one. If everything goes right in that matchup, if we were to lose that game, it would suck, but I would be okay if it was the Lions out of any other team in the NFC. But that's going to do it. Of course, next week, episode 200. Amir, if you are going to be able to join the show, I know you're busy with training camp and all that at the moment, but NFL, we're currently, again, preseason is starting next week. So, starting tonight, rather. So, interested to watch if I could talk correctly here at the end of the podcast. But that's going to do it. We'll see you guys next week. Enjoy preseason. And until then, stay happy, stay healthy, get out of here.